Welcome to Heavy Storytelling. We're going to be reading a story. But first up, we're going to be doing the Bible verse of the day, and then we're going to be doing Bible time, and then we're going to be doing synopsis, and then we're going to be reading Around the World in 80 Days. I think we're on chapter
4. I don't remember. I've got it marked. Okay.
6, maybe? Yep, 6. So,
we're not on 6.
Yeah?
Okay, just come on.
Don't worry about it.
We are going to be reading Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. That is the verse of the day, but you guys enjoy? Bible time.
Bible time! Hi, how are you? You like my new theme song? Alright, so we're on Romans chapter 4. Thank you to people for showing up and listening to the word. Here it is, Romans chapter 4. Yes, and everybody else that's in the room, I thank you also. Okay, this is the English Standard Version. Hi, JJ, what was that verse?
Galatians 5:22.
And 23. Okay, this is Romans chapter 4, English Standard Version. What then shall we say was gained by Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh? For if Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the Scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Now to the one who works, his wages are not counted as a gift, but as his due. And to the one who does not work, but believes in him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is counted as righteousness. Just as David also speaks of the blessing of the one to whom God counts righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord will not count his sin. Is this blessing then only for the circumcised or also for the uncircumcised? For we say that faith was counted to Abraham as righteousness. How then was it counted to him? Was it before or after he had been circumcised? It was not after, but before he was circumcised. He received the sign of circumcision as the seal of the righteousness that he had by faith while he was still uncircumcised. The purpose was to make him the father of all who believe without being circumcised, so that righteousness would be counted to them as well, and to make him the father of the circumcised, who are not merely circumcised, but who also walk in the footsteps of the faith that our father Abraham had before he was circumcised. For the promise to Abraham and his offspring that he would be heir of the world did not come through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For it is the adherents of the law who are to be the heirs. Faith is null, and the promise is void. For the law brings wrath, but where there is no law, there is no transgression. That is why it depends on faith, in order that the promise may rest on grace, and be guaranteed to all his offspring, not only to the adherent of the law, but also to the one who shares the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made you the father of many nations. In the presence of the God in whom he believed, who gives life to the dead and calls into existence the things that do not exist. In hope he believed against hope, that he should become the father of many nations, as he had been told, so shall your offspring be. He did not weaken the faith when he considered his own body, which was as good as dead since he was about 100 years old, or when he considered the barrenness of Sarah's womb. No unbelief made him waver concerning the promise of God, but he grew strong in his faith as he gave glory to God, fully convinced that God was able to do what he had promised. That is why his faith was counted to him as righteousness. But the words "it was counted to him" were not written for his sake alone, but for ours also. It will be counted to us who believe in him who raised from the dead Jesus our Lord, who was delivered up for our trespasses and raised for our justification. That is the end of Romans chapter 4. I hope that God is blessing you with the reading of his word. So now we are in Around the World in 80 Days. And in the last section, Fix, we got to meet Detective Fix, and he was talking to the consulate, and while he was talking to the consulate, Passepartout came in to ask if he could get his visa stamped, and they said that his master had to come in person. So his master came, and Detective Fix arrested him, and he went to jail, and that ended his trip around the world. Here's Kimberly to say how it really happened.
So, Mom did my hair last night, so it's all curly and wavy. So what happened was, it's Mr. Fix, right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Fix, he is going off of the description of the criminal, and apparently Mr. Fogg, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Fogg.
Mr. Fogg fits the description perfectly, like even on his passport. So he's like, okay, I found the criminal. He's running away. Look at all the places he's been, where in fact he'd been collecting passport, like,
Visas.
yeah, visas to prove he's actually been to these places on his Around the World in 80 Days trip. And meanwhile, the police are like, okay, let's arrest him. He's obviously running away from the jailbreak. Well, not jailbreak, the bank robbery. Sorry, I'm getting my mind a bit mixed up right now. So I'm going to hand it off to Dad, who's going to read us another chapter or two.
So the reason why Detective Fix hasn't arrested him yet is he is waiting on a warrant from the authorities, from the Scotland Yard, to come so that he can legally arrest him, and then he will put him in custody, and so that will be the end of the story. Okay. But we'll have to see how it plays out. All right, so this is chapter 8, in which Passepartout talks rather more, perhaps, than is prudent. Fix soon rejoined Passepartout, who was lounging and looking about on the quay, as if he did not feel that he, at least, was obliged not to see anything. "Well, my friend," said the detective, coming up with him, "is your passport visaed?" "Ah, it's you, it is, monsieur," responded Passepartout. "Thanks, yes, the passport is all right." "And you're looking about you?" "Yes, but we travel so fast that I seem to be journeying in a dream. So this is Suez?" "Yes." "In Egypt?" "Certainly, in Egypt." "And in Afrique?" "In Africa." "In Afrique," repeated Passepartout. "Just think, monsieur, I had no idea that we should go farther than Paris, and all that I saw of Paris was between 20 minutes past 7 and 20 minutes before 9 in the morning, between the Northern and the Lyons station, through the windows of a car, and in a driving rain. How I regret not having once more Père Lachaise and the circus in the Champs-Élysées." "You are in a great hurry, then?" "I am not, but my master is. By the way, I must buy some shoes and shirts. We came away without trunks, only with a carpet bag." "I will show you an excellent shop for getting what you want." "Really, monsieur, you are very kind." And they walked off together, Passepartout chatting volubly as they went along. "Above all," said he, "don't let me lose the steamer." You have plenty of time. It's only 12 o'clock. Passepartout pulled out his big watch. 12! He exclaimed. Why, it's only 8 minutes before 10. Your watch is slow. My watch? A family watch, monsieur, which has come down from my great-grandfather. It doesn't vary 5 minutes in the year. It's perfect chronometer, look you. I see how it is, said Fix. You have kept London time, which is 2 hours behind that of Suez. You ought to regulate your watch at noon in each country. I regulate my watch? Never! Well then, it will not agree with the sun. So much the worse for the sun, monsieur. The sun will be wrong then. And the worthy fellow returned the watch to its fob with a defiant gesture. After a few minutes' silence, Fix resumed. You left London hastily, then? I rather think so. Last Friday at 8 o'clock in the evening, Monsieur Fogg came home from his club, and 3/4 of an hour afterward we were off. But where is your master going? Always straight ahead. He is going round the world. Round the world, cried Fix. Yes, and in 80 days, he says it is on a wager, but between us, I don't believe a word of it. That wouldn't be common sense. There's something else in the wind. Ah, Mr. Fogg is a character, is he? I should say he was. Is he rich? No doubt, for he is carrying an enormous sum in brand new banknotes with him, and he doesn't spare the money on the way either. He has offered a large reward to the engineer of the Mongolia if he gets us to Bombay well in advance of time. And you have known your master a long time? Why, no, I entered his service the very day we left London. The effect of these replies upon the already suspicious and excited detective may be imagined. The hasty departure from London soon after the robbery, the large sum carried by Mr. Fogg, his eagerness to reach distant countries, the pretext of an eccentric and foolhardy bet, all confirmed Fix in his theory. He continued to pump poor Passepartout and learned that he really knew little or nothing of his master, who lived in a solitary existence in London, was said to be rich, though no one knew whence came his riches, and was mysterious and impenetrable in his affairs and habits. Fix felt sure that Phileas Fogg would not land at Suez, but was really going on to Bombay. Is Bombay far from here? Asked Passepartout. Pretty far. It's 10 days' voyage by sea. And in what country is Bombay? India. In Asia? Certainly. The deuce! I was going to tell you. There's one thing that worries me, my burner. What burner? My gas burner, which I forgot to turn off, and which is at this moment burning at my expense. I have calculated, monsieur, that I lost 2 shillings every 24 hours, exactly 6 pence more than I earn, and you will understand that the longer our journey... Did Fix pay any attention to Passepartout's trouble about the gas? It is not probable. He was not listening, but was cogitating a project. Passepartout and he had now reached the shop where Fix left his companion to make his purchases, after recommending him not to miss the steamer, and hurried back to the consulate. Now that he was fully convinced, Fix had quite recovered his equanimity. Consul, said he, I have no longer any doubt. I have spotted my man. He passed himself off as an odd stick who is going round the world in 80 days. Then he's a sharp fellow, returned the consul, and counts on returning to London after putting the police of the 2 continents off his track. We'll see about that, replied Fix. But are you mistaken? I am not mistaken. Why was this robber so anxious to prove by the visa that he had passed through Suez? Why? I have no idea, but listen to me. He reported in a few words the most important parts of his conversation with Passepartout. In short, said the consul, appearances are wholly against this man. And what are you going to do? Send a dispatch to London for a warrant of arrest to be dispatched instantly to Bombay. Take passage on board the Mongolia, follow my rogue to India, and there on English ground arrest him politely, with my warrant in my hand and my hand on his shoulder. Having uttered these words with a cool, careless air, the detective took leave of the consul, and repaired to the telegraph office, whence he sent the dispatch, which we have seen to the London police office. A quarter of an hour later found Fix with a small bag in his hand, proceeding on board the Mongolia, and ere many moments longer, the noble steamer rode out at full steam upon the waters of the Red Sea. Chapter 9. Are we good?
We painted our nails in Christmas theme.
Perfect. Chapter 9, in which the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean prove propitious to the designs of Phileas Fogg. The distance between Suez and Aden is precisely 1,310 miles, and the regulations of the company allow the steamers 138 hours in which to traverse it. The Mongolia, thanks to the vigorous exertions of the engineer, seemed likely, so rapid was her speed, to reach her destination considerably within that time. The greater part of the passengers from Brindisi were bound for India, some for Bombay, others for Calcutta by way of Bombay, the nearest route thither, now that a railway crosses the Indian peninsula. Among the passengers was a number of officials and military officers of various grades, the latter being either attached to the regular British forces or commanding the sepoy troops, and receiving high salaries ever since the central government has assumed the powers of the East India Company, for the sub-lieutenants get £280, brigadiers £2,400, and generals of divisions £4,000. What with the military men, a number of rich young Englishmen on their travels, and the hospitable efforts of the pursuer, the time passed quickly on the Mongolia. The best of fare was spread upon the cabin tables at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the 8 o'clock supper, and the ladies scrupulously changed their toilets twice a day, and the hours were whirled away, and the sea was tranquil with music, dancing, and games. But the Red Sea is full of caprice, and often boisterous like most long and narrow gulfs. When the wind came from the African or Asian coast, the Mongolia with her long hull rolled fearfully. Then the ladies speedily disappeared below, the pianos were silent, singing and dancing suddenly ceased, yet the good ship ploughed straight on, unretarded by wind or wave, toward the straits of Babelmandeb. What was Phileas Fogg doing all this time? It might be thought that, in his anxiety, he would be constantly watching the changes of the wind, the disorderly raging of the billows, every chance, in short, which might force the Mongolia to slacken her speed, and thus interrupt his journey. But if he thought of these possibilities, he did not betray the fact by any outward sign. Always the same impassible member of the Reform Club, whom no incident could surprise, and as unvarying as the ship's chronometers, and seldom having the curiosity even to go upon the deck, he passed through the memorial scenes of the Red Sea with cold indifference, did not care to recognize the historic towns and villages which, along its borders, raised their picturesque outlines against the sky, and betrayed no fear of the dangers of the Arabic Gulf, which the old historians always spoke of with horror, and upon which the ancient navigators never ventured without propitiating the gods by ample sacrifices. How did this eccentric personage pass his time on the Mongolia? He made his 4 hearty meals every day, regardless of the most persistent rolling and pitching on the part of the steamer, and he played whist indefatigably indefatigably, without fatigue, for he had found partners as enthusiastic in the game as himself. A tax collector on the way to his post at Goa, the Reverend Decimus Smith returning to his parish at Bombay, and a brigadier general of the English army who was about to rejoin his brigade at Benares made up the party, and with Mr. Fogg played whist by the hour together in absorbing silence. As for Passepartout, he too had escaped seasickness, and took his meals conscientiously in the forward cabin. He rather enjoyed the voyage, for he was well fed and well lodged, took a great interest in the scenes through which they were passing, and consoled himself with the delusion that his master's whim would end at Bombay. He was pleased on the day after leaving Suez to find on deck the obliging person with whom he had walked and chatted on the quays. "If I am not mistaken," said he, approaching this person with his most amiable smile, "you are the gentleman who so kindly volunteered to guide me at Suez." That one was Passepartout. "Ah, I quite recognize you. You are servant of the strange Englishman." It's not always clear who's talking at the beginning, so it takes me a minute or two. "Just so, Monsieur Fix. Monsieur Fix," resumed Passepartout, "I am charmed to find you on board. Where are you bound?" "Like you, to Bombay." "That's capital. Have you made this trip before?" "Several times. I am one of the agents of the Peninsular Company." "Then you know India?" "Why, yes," replied Fix, who spoke cautiously. "A curious place, this India?" "Oh, very curious. Mosques, minarets, temples, fakirs, pagodas, tigers, snakes, elephants. I hope you will have ample time to see the sights." "I hope so, Monsieur Fix. You see, a man of sound sense ought not to spend his life jumping from a steamer upon a railway train, and from a railway train upon a steamer again, pretending to make the tour of the world in 80 days. No, all these gymnastics, you may be sure, will cease at Bombay." "And Mr. Fogg is getting on well?" asked Fix in the most natural tone in the world. "Quite well. And I, too, I eat like a famished ogre. It's the sea air." "But I never see your master on deck." "Never. He hasn't the least curiosity." "Do you know, Mr. Passepartout, that this pretended tour in 80 days may conceal some secret errand? Perhaps a diplomatic mission?" "Faith, Monsieur Fix, I assure you I know nothing about it, nor would I give half a crown to find out." After this meeting, Passepartout and Fix got in the habit of chatting together, the latter making it a point to gain the worthy man's confidence. He frequently offered him a glass of whiskey or pale ale in the steamer bar-room, which Passepartout never failed to accept with graceful alacrity, mentally pronouncing Fix the best of good fellows. Meanwhile, the Mongolia was pushing forward rapidly. On the 13th, Mocha, surrounded by its ruined walls, whereon date trees were growing, was sighted, and on the mountains beyond were espied vast coffee fields. Passepartout was ravished to behold this celebrated place, and thought that, with its circular walls and dismantled fort, it looked like an immense coffee cup and saucer. The following night they passed through the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, which means in Arabic, the Bridge of Tears, and the next day they put in at Steamer Point, northwest of Aden Harbor, to take in coal. This matter of fueling steamers is a serious one at such distances from the coal mines. It cost the Peninsular Company some £800,000 a year. In these distant seas, coal is worth 3 or 4 pounds sterling a ton. The Mongolia had still 1,650 miles to traverse before reaching Bombay, and was obliged to remain 4 hours at Steamer Point to coal up. But this delay, as it was foreseen, did not affect Phileas Fogg's program. Besides, the Mongolia, instead of reaching Aden on the morning of the 15th when she was due, arrived there on the evening of the 14th, a gain of 15 hours. Mr. Fogg and his servant went ashore at Aden to have the passport again visaed. Fix, unobserved, followed them. The visa procured, Mr. Fogg returned on board to resume his former habits, while Passepartout, according to custom, sauntered about among the mixed population of Somalis, Banyans, Parsees, Jews, Arabs, and Europeans who comprise the 25,000 inhabitants of Aden. He gazed with wonder upon the fortifications which make this place the Gibraltar of the Indian Ocean, and the vast cisterns where the English engineers were still at work, 2,000 years after the engineers of Solomon. Very curious, said Passepartout to himself on returning to the steamer. I see that it is by no means useless to travel, if a man wants to see something new. At 6 p.m. the Mongolia slowly moved out of the roadstead and was soon once more on the Indian Ocean. She had 168 hours in which to reach Bombay, and the sea was favorable, the wind being in the northwest, and all sails aiding the engine. The steamer rolled but little, the ladies in fresh toilets reappeared on deck, and the singing and dancing were resumed. The trip was being accomplished by most successfully, and Passepartout was enchanted with the congenial companion which chance had secured him in the person of the delightful Fix. On Sunday, October 20th, toward noon, they came in sight of the Indian coast. 2 hours later, the pilot came on board. A range of hills lay against the sky in the horizon, and soon the row of palms which adorn Bombay came distinctly into view. The steamer entered the road formed by the islands in the bay, and at 4:30 she hauled up the quays of Bombay. Phileas Fogg was in the act of finishing the 33rd rubber of the voyage, and his partner and himself, having by bold stroke captured all 13 of the tricks, concluded this fine campaign with a brilliant victory. The Mongolia was due at Bombay on the 22nd. She arrived on the 20th. This was a gain to Phileas Fogg of 2 days since his departure from London, and he calmly entered the fact in the itinerary in the column of gains. That is the end of chapter 9. So tomorrow we will begin with chapter 10 of Around the World in 80 Days. In case you're wondering, whist is something like bridge, or like spades, if that's your fancy for a game of 4-player cards. So, I hope you're enjoying the story. I know this is one of my favorites by Jules Verne, and God bless you. I hope you have a super night, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks.